This week on LCARA Ham Radio, we're going to take the standard Comet GP-6 dual band antenna and we're going to implement some enhancements to help it weather better on top of a tower. That's what's coming up this week on LCARA Ham Radio. So we're going to start with a very standard GP-6 Comet dual band antenna. Now these are great antennas. I've used the GP1s and GP3s, so it has the club. But I wanted to go with the GP-6 in this particular instance. And part of the reason was due to the distance from LCARA. I've moved down into Tennessee and I'm further away, so I want an omnidirectional antenna that I'm hoping I can use. If not with LCARA, with certainly local repeaters in the area, but I'm pretty much in a rural spot. So if there's one thing that I've learned from AC4DM or Elmer here at LCARA is that you can make these antennas better than what they are just out of the regular packaging. And we've made these kinds of adjustments to the antennas that we use at our repeater sites. Well, let's get started. One of the things about the Comet GP-6 antenna, but there are several other makes of this kind of antenna, is taking the standard antenna and looking at it critically and saying, where are the weak spots? Now, our Elmer AC4DM has been utilizing antennas of this manufacturer and others over the years and has noticed that if you make or implement some enhancements, these antennas will actually weather for a lot longer amount of time. One of the weaknesses of this particular antenna is that it has this set screw and then it also has a bolt that goes in and goes into a collar on the antenna element that his left hand is currently gripping. But that's it. And when you put these antennas up on a tower for quite a bit of time, the wind moves them back and forth or vibrates them over time, and that screw gets loose, or the housing that the screw goes through to connect it to the housing to the antenna becomes oblong, and therefore the antenna gets loose on the inside. So what we're doing here is we're taking the housing off just to kind of look at the inside, because a lot of folks who buy these antennas, you may never actually take it apart and really look on the inside. And you can see how it doubles back on itself with some of the wire here to get the length that we need for both 2 meters and 70 centimeters. So there's some copper wire in use here, plus some soldered brass to create that length that we need. Now this is just one half of the antenna.
Several capacitors in there. That's tuned. That's like somebody spent some time in their design phase, probably more than any.
Caps again.
Rotate around a little bit. Yeah. And there's another one. There's like
on the other side for the other frequency. So they've got
one for 2 meter, one for 440.
One for 440.
And you see you have two here that are in series, and capacitors in series add themselves.
You add double your capacitance on it, right?
Actually.
Or does it have
capacitors in series divide themselves.
Divide.
So,
okay.
So if you have them in parallel, then they add. See.
Can't see. Oh, they say 500 volts. I guess they have to be capable of higher voltage off. Yep. So, and then this attaches to here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's more of the same of that.
Yeah.
No more coils like at the bottom.
No.
It's just these loops.
It just goes on up there, you know.
So the purpose of these loops then
it just goes on
is
up there. And you see here's a stage here between probably
2 and 440.
Your 440 and your 2 meters again once again. See.
So it's probably the upper section is just 440.
So it's at this point we start looking at some of the other antennas that are in AC4DM's garage. Here we're looking at a 220 antenna, if I'm not mistaken, and you can see how it's weathered. It didn't have the enhancements applied to it. Don got out his Krylon triple thick crystal clear. We're not sponsored by Krylon, but we are going to apply this to the antenna when we're finished. And another enhancement that he's come across when you have to put two sections together is to utilize heat shrink. So we pull out the trusty portable drill press and we're going to create 2 additional mounting holes on the antenna. But wait, there's more. AC4DM has created a kit specifically for taking antennas like these and creating the additional holes and installing the additional bolts.
Washers. Here's the
Here, you can tell it used to be in his pocket.
here's the bolt that somebody didn't bring.
You've only had to deal with that a few times, huh?
Right.
Well, that bolt's
Well,
easy to lose.
Hey, you won't be.
You look at all of the components within this little plastic box, you can see we have additional bolts just like the ones that come with the antenna, but we'll need 2 additional. We have lock washers, we have regular washers, and we also have the ability to screw in some additional coils, if you will, for washer and bolts for the other 2 positions. So it just depends on how you want to go about this. You could use the bolts, as we'll see in the video. We actually used open-ended, what I'll call no-head screws. And then I'm showing off here the drill and tap kits needed for the sizing of the bolts and so forth for this antenna, or ones like it, like the GP1, GP3, and in this case, the GP-6. When you look over this kit, Don has everything in here that one would need to implement the enhancements on this style of antenna. Pretty cool. Something anybody could build.
Wobble is the
You see,
problem.
see where it's wobbled all inside there and all this, that, and the other?
It's all
Okay.
stretched out.
Now that's what happens. See?
Well, look at that. It went from a circle to an oblong just from the
Just from wobbling.
Just from the movement.
Because
from
of
the
the
wind
wind.
blasting it.
And to repair this, what I've got to do, I have got to turn it 180 degrees and redo this side here and make this the top side, and this will be the bottom side from that point on. See?
And this one, you'll do all 3 holes
Yeah.
Right.
instead of just like
Just
that. I
that
had
one.
the one.
Pulls it down,
Yeah.
so it's going to go down.
Instead of curling up inside.
But now if it's loose like that and wobbling around, then the water's going to get in there everywhere, you know.
Huh.
Inches.
Right, so the 8s are for the radials, and
Yeah.
10s for the screws that go in on the sides to the sleeve.
When Don started putting all these kits together, I bet
your
the
tap handle.
makers of 8 and 10 millimeter wrenches just got crazy because they're like, wait a minute, all of our 8 and 10 millimeter wrenches are going, because we've got them in the trailer too, and I'm sure he's probably got at least 1 or 2 other kits.
It's dead centered at 35 millimeters or 3.5 centimeters.
Right.
120, roughly 120 degrees, another 120 degrees. Then you have that one center one that holds that in that groove. But yeah, see, here you've got one screw holding it all in there. Then you have one screw that goes in and holds that connector in there. So once we get this done, we'll actually have 3 holding the connector and 3 of them
Right.
holding this thing here. So
So do your magic.
He's going to finish up just measuring, and he's going to use his punch here to make sure that he gets a good little hole, if you will, or crater in the aluminum, so that when he begins drilling, he can drill right where he wants it to be. And hopefully it won't dance on him. So we get the portable drill press here going, and a small bit. Again, you want to start with a small bit and then work up to a larger bit. And it's just really cool that he's got the portable drill here, press, just ready to go. Just pulled it out and off we went. So we're going to drill, let's say, the first hole here. And again, that's going to give us a total of 3 when we get done. He's spinning it around. This will be the second hole that he's going to drill, roughly 120 degrees. There we go.
That they're in
Use the-
stationary, and then
get
use those
ready in
holes as a
place.
guide.
Doesn't matter. You wouldn't be able to see that from this side either, Brad. I can't see it.
all right, give me a number 10 wrench over.
Number 10 and number 8 is all you need on this one.
So now that we have the 1 bolt in to help us center the remaining holes, we're going to go ahead and drill the other 2 a little bit larger, and we're going to go through the actual aluminum housing on the bottom half of the antenna element. Again, this little portable drill press is amazing for this kind of work.
We're going all the way through or not?
Yeah, I got to go all the way through
Yeah.
because I want to go into those
You're gonna tap it.
grooves in that end piece there. See, so when it goes in, it will sit into this piece here that goes up in there.
Got it.
So now that we have the smaller holes going through this collar, we can now take our larger bit, the correct size bit for the size bolts we're going to use, and make sure that we have 3 screws that can ultimately go in and ensure that the collar and the antenna fit well and are not going to wobble.
Oh wow. Okay. Bigger and littler and oh yeah. All the way to the tinies. And you got
Yeah.
you've actually got both standard and metric in here.
Yeah, and the alphabet.
Yeah.
See?
Oh,
There's your alphabet, A through Z.
I've never heard of them numbering them like that. I have seen stuff where they number it in thousands. Like it
Well,
looks like up here.
This
Oh, no,
here,
those are just
this here, you
numeric.
just get you a chart like this, and that'll give you your thousands, your fractions.
that. That's pretty cool. And it tells you, like an M is a 0.2.
Afterwards. Now what we got to do now is to drill in here.
So we're
where we
focusing on that
Where
right
we can get ready to do our tapping.
So just
So Don gets out his trusty gauge here, and what he's double checking is to make sure that the final drill that we're going to use, the drill bit that we're going to use, is going to be the diameter that we need before we actually utilize the drill and tap, or to actually tap and put in the threads. So we want to make sure that we have the right final drill bit size. And of course, he double checks everything. So he's used his gauge, he's using that to see if how much larger we need it to be, and then he's going to go ahead and start drilling out that part of the antenna.
Number 8 screws. Number 8.
Alrighty, so he's going to take his drill press now with the final size drill bit and drill out that part, the 2 new holes on the antenna, before we tap it and put in those threads. Alrighty, so now he's going to take out his drill and tap handle. He's going to insert this tap piece and tighten it down, and then start creating threads on the inside of this antenna element in those 2 new holes.
everybody gets shot.
There's just something really satisfying watching this process, and especially watching these tools in somebody's hands that has done this many, many times. And even though you might not have these skill sets at this time, it's definitely something that you might want to pick up and learn how to do. So as you can see, as he continues to twist, it gets easier and easier as it creates those threads in the aluminum. That's the first hole. Now we got to move on to the second. So we pick it up here after he's finished the second one. You could just see the threads as he pulled that out, and he'll take one of the bolts to ensure that it will ultimately fit. He's also going to swage this out just a little bit so there aren't any burrs. You can see a little bit of metal just there on his fingers. Just this attention to detail is always something that I appreciate. Then we have our bolt. Will it screw in? Is it the right threads? Yes, indeed. Same kind of bolt that the product comes with, but you only get one. And so at this point, we're going to start reassembling the lower half. We've got the 3 bolt hole screws now that will actually go in and prevent that connector from wobbling and or coming out. Just be careful on reinsertion. As you can see, as KD6 FTR pushes it in,
If you pull it out and show them there's that before you tighten it, See that curve right there? So all the screws do is they just go into that
Right.
and lock it
Can't
in.
move up or down, can't move
So,
nowhere.
so instead of having, you have just one set screw
Yeah.
normally,
Now you got,
and then
now you'd have 3 in there.
Right.
and so I was looking at his design here of his system and like, oh yeah, this is actually a pretty good deal.
So we have the lower half of the antenna done, or shall we say the antenna element. The sleeve that comes up over and protects that connector and your cable, the holes there need to be enlarged so that the bolts that we're going to utilize, all 3 of them, will go through this housing and ensure that antenna doesn't wobble. Next, we're going to remove these U brackets, if you will, and what Don's going to do is ensure that these brackets are completely level so that when we actually go to install this on the tower, the Ken, for instance, KI4RWO, won't actually have to straighten this. So he's going to loosen these and then straighten them up. Now that we have the sleeve all balanced or level, we're going to reinsert it and go ahead and install the hardware that it uses with the antenna element so that this portion of the antenna and the enhancements are complete. So he's installing what is essentially an open bolt here, or a headless bolt, that you can use an Allen wrench to remove. So we've got the regular bolt there that you can see on the top, but he's installing these. Now they're threaded the same, so the bolt and these 2 other items are threaded the same, but they don't actually have a bolt head on them. Not exactly sure why he went in this direction. He actually has the bolt, so you could do 3 bolts. And if I remember correctly, these are 10 millimeter, as are the ones for the brackets that help you attach to the mast. The only thing that's an 8 millimeter are the radial nuts. So he's getting that third
So they stick out quite a ways.
headless bolt, if you will, in there, utilizing his Allen wrench. Make sure they're down and they're tightened so that they go into that groove.
So the one that's between these 2 in here that's underneath, that's that screw.
Yeah.
These 2 are doing the same thing. They're
Same
going
thing.
right to that U. This one doesn't go that deep?
Nope.
It's not long enough.
Well, that'd be easy to fix.
Use a longer bolt.
Pull that bolt out and put 3 of these in. Nuts and washers. So let's do this.
There you go.
Because that other one looked like it wanted to fall off. No, I don't want it to fall off. Here, I will hold that for you.
Come on, get on there.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
So at this point, we go ahead and tighten down those nuts onto the lock washers, and the sleeve and the antenna become one.
Lightsaber.
It's a lightsaber. That's how.
But it's not so light.
Well, you got to do the noise.
It's not. There is zero,
Zero movement.
no wobble. I can't get a twist out of it. Nothing. Solid. Vanna White. It's the GP-6 light. Don't
Oh,
touch
the
that part, I'll burn
GP-6
my
Max
fingers off.
lightsaber. Yeah, you can't touch the white part.
Because you go in your fingers.
Right through your fingers.
Yeah, you're done.
So what Don's doing now is he's going to create what is basically an alignment mark from one of the radial sites where we actually have the bolt installed, and that way it'll go anytime we take it apart, or I take it apart, it's actually going to be up on the tower. If I ever have to take it apart, I can realign the bolt hole correctly with that line.
Right.
So we're just seeing what size of the Allen wrench here on these, because those will have to come out 2.5.
2.5 millimeter Allen.
So this is the brass fitting in the second half of the antenna, or the top portion, and you're going to have a little brass rod that slides up into that. So what Don has done is he flattens a part of that copper or the brass tube or copper tube, and so that the screws actually have a little bit more of a flat surface to connect to, and not just a point onto a round surface. So you don't want to take off too much metal here, but just make it a little bit flatter. And then once we have it flattened, we can insert it into this little fitting. There are 2 screws here. Some people will go the extra mile and solder these pieces together. Don has not found that to really be necessary in his experience, so we're just going to use the 2 screws. But again, remember, we are hopefully tightening those down on the flat portion of that tube. The one thing you want to be careful of, though, is it is a tube. You don't want to over-tighten those screws and then bend or flatten that tube. So now we put the 2 pieces together. And they really just screw together, as we saw in the video previous when I put this antenna together in its standard configuration.
Here we're doing Brian's antenna for him.
I had seen a couple of other antennas in Don's shop and on the property, and had noticed that a couple of them that were longer had heat shrink tubing where the 2 halves come together. And so he got out his box of marine grade heat shrink here that has adhesive on the inside, and we just wanted to try to find a diameter large enough to fit over that coupling where the 2 pieces come together. So we've got a black piece there that we should be able to use. And in fact, as Don goes through his heat shrink, he says, I've got to order some more. So we'll bring it over to the antenna and let's see if it'll slide over that coupling. It's a little tight, so we're going to have to come up with a technique to get that tubing or heat shrink past that coupling just a little bit.
Middle, start the middle and work out.
Shrink it from
work
here
out,
out.
that way that forces everything out as you come out. So.
Yeah. I think it's. I think that can get pushed on here. I just didn't want to push it on and then it not come off.
Right. No, I think with just a little bit of soap would be fine.
If that works. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. So, is that far enough for you?
Yeah,
You want it farther in, Brian?
No, that should be good right there.
All right. So that bad boy's in there. All right, Don. It's time for you to work your magic.
Do we need to,
Well, you could trim it.
do we want to trim
After.
it, Don?
No.
Well, the heat shrink's a little bit thick, and it does take a little while to get it to form around that coupler. And he's going to start in the middle. Now, we've mentioned this in a few other videos. Don has a very varied background, but he used to work not only in electrical, but in nuclear power plants. And the use of heat shrink was just used everywhere. And there was a special school that you had to go to apply it correctly. And he's using that technique here, starting in the middle where the coupler is, and then working his way to each end. So you can see that he is turning that element to continue to tighten that bit of heat shrink around that coupler to get a good seal. And remember, there's adhesive on the inside, and this is to keep water and moisture from getting in. So you can see it's just beginning to shrink a little bit. He's ensuring that he's keeping that pretty hot in the areas that he's concentrating on. But you can see there on the left, we just passed the 28 there, that it is really starting to shrink around the that end of that black coupling. And then now as he focuses on the other end, again, working his way out from the middle, you can see it's beginning again to conform to that shape. And then eventually, he will go ahead and shrink down the 2 ends so that they become very tight against the antenna element. And you'll see a little bit of glue coming out of each end.
There it comes. We have the glue ooze. Looking good. That thing is going to be snug as a bug in a rug. That'll never...
Alrighty, so at this point, it's time to put the radials on. You'll notice there's a nut on the end that you can snug down to prevent the radial from vibrating off. And KD6 FTR is going ahead and putting those on, and we're just about done. We've still got one more enhancement once these radials are put on. So this is, again, it's just getting them on. Now, in transport, you would probably take these off and just make sure that you don't lose them. If it sounds like I've come close to losing these, it's because I have. And the use of these CC sawhorses, I'll get it out in a minute, allows us to work more easily. So 3 radials are going on, and then we're going to get out our special weapon, or enhancement, as it is.
I had all that and then I turned it off.
Now out comes the Krylon, and we're going to be giving 2 coats of this clear lacquer, if you will, to protect the fiberglass and the antenna out in the elements.
Well, this section.
Again, Don has utilized this technique for many years. We've taken antennas down since I've been a member of the club that didn't have this treatment, and we've taken down and worked with antennas that did have this treatment, and it's a pretty big difference between them. And what Mike is doing here is turning it about 120 degrees-ish so that we can get good coverage down the length of this first half of the antenna, and then he'll also do the same thing on the second half. So again, the big thing here, as you can see, and he's actually doing a really good job here, staying about 9 to 12 inches away, is you want it to go on lightly on this first coat to give you a nice adhesion layer, and then the second coat will come along and fill it in. What you don't want to do is stay in one spot too long and it would start to drip. And to finish it off, I actually put the Krylon can in my hand, put KD6 FTR behind the camera, and applied the last coat here to the antenna. And you can see that with this second coat, we can go on a little bit heavier, but the key again is to keep moving. What you don't want to do is stay in one spot and it would drip on you. And with these 2 coats, this will give us a little bit more UV protection, and it should last longer up on that tower with very, very little maintenance required. Turning it roughly about 120 degrees-ish, but again, we're just trying to get good coverage on both ends of the antenna.
It's a little wet.
And boy, does this stuff have some fumes. You definitely want to make sure you have good ventilation, utilizing probably just about any kind of paint. But this lacquer, boy, all I can say is open the doors, the garage doors, wherever you might be using this. Because if you don't, there's a really good chance you're going to feel it later. And that's basically the enhancements in how to take a pretty standard Comet GP-6 antenna and make it a little better from a weatherization standpoint and from a longevity standpoint. So all that's left to do now is to put back those brackets and U-joints, if you will, so that we'll have something to attach this antenna to the mast at the tower at Tiny Fangorn. We hope you've enjoyed this video, and one of the things the reason we put videos like this together is to show you that you have Elmers probably near you in a club near you in your community somewhere that can teach you some of the things that they've learned over a lifetime. And even if it's something as simple as just enhancing an antenna you already have, it's a lot of fun to learn some of the skills involved, whether it's heat shrink, whether it's drill and tap, but something that you can say, hey, I can do this the next time. And we hope a video like this will help you in the future. For the Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association, I'm KY4BDP. We hope you've enjoyed this video. Give it a like, subscribe, and we'll see you down the road. 73.